Evening, everybody. Welcome back to our session this evening on knowing the research methods. It's a slightly longer session this evening, so we'll be going for about 45 minutes to an hour covering research methods. So don't forget, follow us on our Instagram account, which is at tutor2u psych, and on there you'll see our live revision schedule along with other revision resources. Don't forget, you can watch the lives on playback as well if you missed this evening, but just an encouragement that today is an interactive session as always, so please really do encourage you to pop your answers and comments in the chat box. If you've got any questions, Melissa and I will endeavour to answer them in the session this evening. So let's get started with our research methods session. So our first activity that we're going to be doing today is called the big reveal. So you're going to have to work out what is hidden behind the question mark before you or I give away all the clues. Okay, so let's have a look at this one. In case you haven't played this one before, you're going to have 5 clues. But you can start guessing as we reveal clue 1. Okay, so if you think you know the research method after clue 1, pop it in the chat box. So let's have a look at clue 1 then to start with. So we've got I manipulate the IV. So again, we're thinking about research methods. Okay, so the method of research here. So can't see any responses thus far. And again, fine if you want to guess, that's absolutely fine until we get the right answer. So number 2, let's have a look at that clue then. So we've got I manipulate the IV. Then we've got participants are aware they're taking part. Okay, so think about the research methods where participants might be aware they're taking part. Anybody got any ideas or even any guesses that they want to put in the chat box? Okay, so that is a type of variable. And definitely a key specialist variable you want to know for the exam, but not quite a research method. So Maisie Moo, you're saying lab experiment. Guest, we're also saying lab experiment. Let's go to clue 3. Some are saying observation. Participants may not know the aims. So are we sticking with what we've said in the chat box, or do we want to change our answers? Let's have a look at clue 4. I am conducted, and this is a big giveaway, guys, in a carefully controlled environment. So those of you that haven't answered already, pop what you think the answer is in the chat box. Yeah, really good. So we've got some really good answers coming through. Let's reveal clue 5 then, our last one. I am used primarily for the biological and behavioural approaches. Yeah, I think we've all got that one. Really good. So our big reveal here is a laboratory experiment. Okay, so well done. Excellent. Let's have a look at our next big reveal. We've got a couple of these to do. Let's see how quick we can be on this next one. So we've got I have high ecological validity. So a research method that has high ecological validity. What are we thinking? So a bit different from our last research method there. No one wants to have a go at guessing because it's too early, is it? Okay, let's have a look at clue 2. Okay, so we've got some answers. Natural experiment. We're saying field as well. Okay, let's go to clue 2 then. I don't tend to have demand characteristics. So we've got quite a few of you saying natural. It's not natural. Yeah, guessed you're saying field or natural. Okay, so we're kind of, yeah, we're saying maybe field. All right, let's go to clue 3. I am not easy to replicate. Have we got any changes in answers or any different answers? I am not easy to replicate. So Maisie's saying quasi. We've got some field in there as well. Let's go to clue 4. Maybe we can get a bit more clarity. Okay, this is a big giveaway, guys. The IV is manipulated. So a research method where the IV is manipulated, but we still have high ecological validity. What is that? I think the majority of you have actually put down, yeah, I thought we had a tie there, but actually a lot of you have said field. Let's go to the last clue then. Participants are not aware that they're being studied. Yep, excellent. Well done, guys. Yeah, so a lot of you are putting field in there. Some of you have put quasi, but that would be incorrect. Okay, so the IV is not manipulated with a quasi. Okay, so do remember that. Let's go to our last big reveal then. So let's go with our first clue. The DV can be carried out in a lab style setting. So maybe what we're saying is the dependent variable can be carried out, measured, if you like, in a lab style setting. It's quite a hard clue for the first one, actually. So again, if you want to have a go at guessing for the first clue, that's fine. It's quite difficult. Okay, so I think a couple of us have said quasi already. All right, let's go to number 2 then. So the IV has not been manipulated. So think about research methods where the IV is not manipulated. And there are a couple there, by the way. There's a couple of research methods where we don't manipulate the IV. Okay, so quite a lot of us are saying quasi. We're sticking with our guns. We're saying quasi, are we? Okay, let's have a look at reveal 3. I allow comparisons between participants to be made. Are we sticking with our guns, guys? We're sticking with our quasi. Let's go to clue 4, I think. I am similar to a natural experiment. Yeah, so good. Daniela, Amelia, yeah, we're saying quasi. Let's go to clue 5 then. The IV is usually a difference, and this is the big giveaway here, a difference between people that exists. So yes, our big reveal here is quasi. Now, can anybody give me an example of a quasi experiment? So when we say the IV is usually a difference between people that exist, can anybody give me an example of that? Any example? One that you might have covered in class. Always good to have an example in your mind of these research methods, especially linking it with studies in the specification if you can. Yeah, good. Yeah, so we've got some good. So we've got gender, female versus male. We've got Sperry's split brain research. So it's IV is usually a difference between people that exist. Yeah, we could say that for that one. Age is another one. Yeah, we could also say things like, expectant mothers. So women that are pregnant, that's, you're not manipulating. That's just, naturally occur, but it's a difference between people that exist. Okay, so yeah, well done on those examples. So we're going to stick with the theme of these research methods, these experiments now. And what I'm going to do, we're going to show you some types of experiments. Okay, so I'm going to read this out in a minute, and your job, okay, is to tell me what type of experiment this is, and most importantly, why. Okay, so a psychologist conducted an experiment to find out if there are any gender differences in spatial awareness abilities. He put an advert in a local newspaper asking for volunteers aged 18 to 65 to take part in a study to investigate spatial ability. So 40 participants in total, 20 males, 20 females. When they arrived at the university psychology department, they were given a test of spatial ability. The test involved correctly rotating and placing 20 shapes in a square box. The participants were given 5 minutes to complete the task, and each participant was given a score out of 20 for the number of shapes they managed to correctly place within 5 minutes. So again, I want you to think about what is the experiment being described here, and I think most importantly, okay, why? Why is it that type of experiment? Okay, so yeah, I think someone's asked here, Shay, you said, what is a quasi-experiment? So quasi-experiment is where we don't manipulate the IV. It's very similar. It kind of comes under the umbrella of natural experiments. Okay, so it's very similar to a natural, if you know what a natural is. But with a quasi, the IV is not made to vary. It's just a difference that it's a difference between participants. Okay, so the IV is a difference between participants. That's why with our examples we had age, gender, for example. Okay, all right, so we've got quite a few answers coming through. Guest, you've got in there first. You said quasi as difference between gender. Okay, well done. Yep. And then quite a lot of us are saying lab experiment. Maisie Moo, you're also saying quasi as no manipulation of IV, it's existing. Yeah, let's just iron this crease out, because it's really, really easy to look at something like this, okay, and say it's a lab experiment, okay? Very easy to do that. But I think one thing that you can do with STEMs or, scenarios like this in the exam is really tease out, okay, what's the IV here and what's the DV? And if you can tease those things out, one of the kind of big giveaways with a lot of the experiments is the IV manipulated or not? What is the IV? Is it an intrinsic factor of the participants or not? So let's have a look at our justifications for this. A couple of you have got it right. So you're right. Guessed Amazing Moo, well done. So it is a quasi experiment, so that I wanted to cover this with you because I know some of you might have difficulty with understanding quasi. So the independent variable, you're quite right in saying this, is gender. That is an existing difference between people and has not been manipulated directly by the psychologist. Okay, so we need to remember that the IV is not directly manipulated, and it's a difference that exists between the participants, between the sample. That is a quasi experiment. Don't forget with a quasi, with the measurement of the DV, you can still measure that in a laboratory style setting. Okay, so you can measure part of it in a lab style setting. That doesn't mean that the whole thing's a lab experiment. So again, one way to tease that apart is really thinking about, okay, what's the IV and what's the DV in these experiments, okay? All right, well done, guys. Let's have a look at the next one. We've got a couple of these that we're just going to analyse. So this is the next one. We've got 2 psychology students aim to investigate whether hunger reduces concentration. Previous research has shown this to be the case. They experimented using a repeated measures design. An opportunity sample of 26 formers from their college was tested 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after they had eaten their lunch. They're required to read a short passage of text on a screen and identify 10 simple grammatical errors as quickly as possible. 2 passages were chosen that were of similar length and where the errors were comparable. The students completed this in the same room with the same heating and lighting, and the time taken to correctly identify all 10 errors was measured in seconds by the computer. So again, what is this? And again, I'm really interested in your justifications here, guys, and this is kind of what you need to be practicing, not just identifying it, but understanding why. Can you justify your answer? So we've got here, oh, it's Lexi, you've put lab. So yeah, you've said part of that is because it's highly controlled. Hannah, also you're saying it's controlled. Guest controlled, you've given us examples, so in the same room. The IV is being manipulated, manipulation of the IV. Yeah, really, really good, guys. You've got this one spot on. So let's reveal our answer and justification. So it is a lab experiment. So you're quite right in saying it was highly controlled. But again, when we say highly controlled, give me examples. So guest, well done, you said same room. It's also same level of heating and lighting. They're also controls, don't forget. And obviously the variables have been carefully manipulated as well, which is what makes it a lab experiment. Okay. All right, so let's have a look at the next one then. Okay, psychologists want to see whether children remember information more accurately, whether it's from a cartoon character or a real person. They studied 100 children from 7 to 8 years in 3 primary schools near their university. Half the children were shown a video of a policeman talking about road safety, which was group A, and the other half was shown the same video, but the policeman was replaced by a cartoon character. That was group B. The children did not know that an experiment was taking place, as the video was shown in their normal classroom by their class teacher as part of a road safety program. After 15 minutes, they were asked 10 multiple choice questions to test their memory of the talk. The psychologist then calculated average scores for each group. So again, what are we thinking here? What type of experiment do we think this is? And there's quite a big giveaway actually in this scenario, in this stem that I've read out. Okay, so we're saying field. Some of us suggest you've said they didn't know that they were in an experiment. Yeah, can you elaborate a bit more on that? What does it say in the stem there? How did they not know? Some of us are saying natural IV is manipulated in the natural setting. Field takes place in a natural environment in a classroom where they didn't know they were being watched. Excellent. Well done. Yeah, so actually the answer to this one is not a natural. Okay, let's reveal the answer here for this one. So this is actually a field, and the reason being, some of you got this correct, the children are watching videos in their natural surrounding where they would normally be exposed to road safety information and not aware they're taking part in an investigation. Okay, so that, remember, with a field experiment, the IV is still manipulated, but it's done in a more natural surrounding. think about the difference between a field and a natural, okay? Field, you're still manipulating. With a natural, you're not. So I think we just need to make sure we're kind of wary of that difference there with manipulation of the IV between those two research methods. Hopefully that answers some of your questions there in the chat box. All right, let's look at our last one then. Last one to cover for these experiments. So we've got a researcher was interested in the long-term effects of natural disasters. The research had already completed a survey of the behaviour of 50 primary school children on a Caribbean island as part of another project. The survey involved parents rating their children's behaviour on several scales. Each behaviour was rated on a 10-point scale, where the higher the rating, the more of that behaviour was being shown. Shortly after the researcher left the island, it was severely damaged by a hurricane, and the researcher decided to repeat the assessments to see if there were any differences. Analysis of the data suggested that the only significant changes in ratings were for anxiety. So again, I'm interested to know, okay, not going to get away with just giving me an answer. I'm interested to know the justification. That's where you're going to pick marks up in the exam, is explaining to the examiner why you think it is that type of experiment. So it's not enough just to say, okay, it's this because they're not manipulating this. You've got to actually be STEM specific. So pick out a part of the STEM to tell me what is the IV that's naturally occurring, for example. Yeah, so olamide, we've got natural because the hurricane was a naturally occurring event and couldn't be prevented. Yeah, it's a real life setting, Hannah. Yeah. Yeah, natural disaster is naturally occurring. Yeah, really good. And that's what we want to see. We want to see those justifications. So you're right. The researcher didn't manipulate the IV like they do with a field experiment. Yeah, the hurricane is a naturally occurring event. The researcher has simply been able to measure the DV by assessing the children before and after the hurricane. So really well done. I hope that irons some creases out for you over those kind of 4 types of experiments, because it's very easy to get those muddled. Okay, so I'm going to hand you over to Melissa now for observations.
Okay guys, so we're going to have a look at now some observations. So we're moving on from experiments now. So everything you've just done with Laura, you can sort of park for a little bit. Now, what you're going to see here, nice and easy, is some images on the screen. All I want you to tell me is what type of observational technique are these? So tell me what type it is and what makes you think that. Why are you saying it's that observational technique? So we've got A and B, so 2 different types here. Okay, we've got a couple coming in. We've got participants and overt. A is overt because the researcher is visible to the participants. Any more guesses? Overt and covert. Okay, I'm going to give you an additional clue now because I'm intrigued. I want you to, for this one, forget the terms overt and covert. Could you argue that it's a different type of observation? Because it might still be overt, it might be covert, but what is different about these 2 settings? Focus on the settings. You've got covert and non-participants as they aren't in the room and being seen. Participant and non-participants. Still looking to see whether one of them has come up that I don't think has actually been mentioned yet. Oh, here we go. Okay. We've got A being controlled. Why would A be controlled? I'm intrigued by that one. Why would A be in a controlled setting? Natural and lab, naturalistic. Okay, let's have a little think. So, 2 scenarios here, A and B. Now, the answer for this one, which is something often we forget, are different types of observational techniques, are naturalistic and controlled. So there's a couple of people who started to talk about that then. I can see lab, that's more terminology we'd associate with experiments. Naturalistic versus controlled. Now, don't get me wrong, some of you are correct with saying that maybe it's non-participant B as well. Remember, these observational techniques, they can be combined. So you could have something which is controlled and also non-participant. So if you said non-participant for either of them, I would agree with you on that one. The reason why A would be naturalistic is it's happening in a natural setting. You've got here, you've got the monkeys in the natural setting. Whereas B is more of a structured, it's someone watching behind the glass screen. You can see it's happening in a very controlled environment. So while you're right with non-participants, yeah, we've got this difference between controlled, where you've probably got some maybe behavioural categories going on that they're looking out for, and the naturalistic environment. Okay, let's have a little look at the next ones then. So we've ticked off naturalistic and controlled. What might we now say about these ones? So we've got two different types now. And some of you have already used this terminology for the last one. What's going on with picture D?
Creepy man in the bush is what's going on.
I know it's an unusual one, isn't it? Okay, we've got Daniela's coming in with overt and covert. Guest is saying C is overt and maybe D is more controlled. There we go. Good answers here. So Julia, overt, the researcher is visible to the participants. They know that they are being observed. What is the purpose of picture D? What are we trying to get at here? Why is he, Hannah's got that one as well. What is it that he's sort of doing in this observational technique? See if we can get any more come up with it. Okay, in love with happy. I like that name. Covert, yeah. Over time, I'm gonna guess that you meant to say overt, and it's auto corrected you. Exactly that. Okay, so C would be overt. Now remember, overt, open. The children are there. They can see that the observer is sat at the back of the classroom. They're not hidden in any way at all. And D would be covert. Nice, easy way to remember that one. Covert being under cover. So he's watching from a distance, and the participants likely, I'm going to guess in this observation, probably don't know that he's hiding in the bushes watching them. So we've got this different type of technique going on here. Overt is open, which is C, and D would be covert because he's undercover. He's watching them from a distance. Well done, Rach. Okay, let's go with the next one. What type of observational techniques are these ones? You're getting good at these now. Okay, Ruby, that was fast. So we said participant and non-participant. Participant and non-participants. Good, we've got a few starting to come through. D being participants. Can you just give me a definition, somebody, what it means to do a participant observation? How would you describe that? Because sometimes it's meant to be quite obvious what it says on the tin, but how would you actually give me a definition for what a participant observation would look like? Can you think of any participant observations which are part of the spec, where the researcher maybe has got involved themselves? Okay, good, Ruby. Yeah, the researcher with the participant, they're going to take part within the group of that experiment. They're actually going to become involved with that experiment. And well done, Julia. That was the one I was thinking of, Zimbardo. Why would Zimbardo, somebody tell me, why would Zimbardo be classed as a participant observation? What was his role? Why did he become one of the participants? What did he take on? We've got Stanford prison experiment. Why particularly though? Why was he a participant? What actual role did he take on within that experiment? He acted, there we go. He's acted as the superintendent. Yeah, so he's actually become involved within his own experiment. Somebody give me an example of a non-participant observation where the researcher hasn't got involved. It's something that you study where the researcher has watched from afar. They've not become one of the participants. Okay, we've got Ash. Ash, we could argue, is maybe more of an experiment. Milgram, again, more experimental because we're changing the variations of obedience and conformity with those ones. A really obvious one. Ainsworth, there we go. Okay, Jennifer, well done. Yeah, Ainsworth, I think you were the first person to say it. So Mary Ainsworth's observation of the strange situation where she didn't take part and she watched people from behind the glass. Now, I'm going to open another question out to here because this is something, I don't know whether you found this, Laura, but something that I always see as being up for debate. And as a teacher, it's something actually I struggle with sometimes. Would you consider Mary Ainsworth's strange situation to be an observation which is overt or covert? And I don't want you to just tell me the answer. I want you to tell me why you would consider Mary Ainsworth's strange situation to be overt or covert. So pop that in the chat. Mary Ainsworth, covert or overt? Okay, Rachel said 2 observers were hidden behind a one-way mirror, so it was covert. Okay, any other interesting ideas? Covert, the children are not aware that they were being observed, one-way mirror. We've got la 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 la. Overts for the mothers, covert for the babies. The mothers knew they were being watched, but the babies didn't. Okay, let's move on to the next slide, because I'm going to pick that back up in a second as to why that's an interesting point to make. So, oh, got this one here. So what type of observational techniques for our last one is this one? So you've got one more following on. So you've got your final different types of observation techniques here, and then we'll go back to Mary Ainsworth in a second. What have we got going on here? What's happening in F and what is happening in G? Good, excellent guess. Okay, so we've got structured versus unstructured. Okay, let's pop on to the next slide so we can just see what the difference is between those two for me. Okay, so remember with your observational techniques, I think the first thing to think about is remembering that there are lots of different types of observational techniques. And it isn't sort of a one-size-fits-all approach. It could be that the observation you're looking at is naturalistic, or it's naturalistic and overt, or it's participant and unstructured. So what you've got here with these observational techniques can be combined. So you could have an observation which is controlled and it's overt and it's participant. So what you've got to remember, if you're asked in the exam as to what type of observational technique is used, you might come out and say, oh, I wrote about it being covert, and somebody said, well, I said non-participant. And that might be true. Okay, there's often multiple different ways that you can go down it. So if we have a little look at this table, what you've got on the left and the right are sort of the polar opposites to each other. So the first one is naturalistic versus controlled. Now, with a naturalistic observation, this is an observation which is carried out in an unaltered setting in which the observer does not interfere in any way. And they just sort of let the behaviour happen and they're present. Whereas a controlled observation would be a little bit more like Mary Ainsworth's strange situation, where it's being conducted under strict conditions, such as in an observation room or a laboratory setting. Now, if you remember at the start, a lot of people said for the controlled observation, it was lab. Lab is more terminology that will go with an experiment. When we're talking about observations, we want to be saying that it's controlled, but that it happens in controlled conditions, such as a laboratory setting. Now, overt and covert, okay, so we've got the participants that are aware of the observation being overt, it's open. It's like maybe your teacher's teaching a lesson and the manager comes in and says, you know, can I just come and observe you? They're letting themselves know that they are there to do an observation. Covert is the complete opposite, and this is when the participants are not aware that they are being observed. So, for example, if one of my students in my classroom decided to turn around tomorrow and say, thank you very much, I've got everything I need, I've actually been observing you for the last 2 weeks, then that would be covert. They've gone undercover. Participants, the observer joins the group being studied. The behaviour is studied from the inside, so they actually become one of the participants. There's a lot of ethical issues with that. We sometimes consider it sometimes as being going native. The participants can sometimes get too involved that they actually forget they're a researcher, which is something which happened with Zimbardo. This is non-participant, so the observer watches from a distance and does not interact with the people being studied. And then you've got structured versus unstructured, and this is the one I think people tend to forget the most. They sort of overlap it a little bit more with controlled versus naturalistic, and there's two very different things. So if we're looking at naturalistic versus control, we're looking at more the setting that it is carried out under. If we're thinking about structured versus unstructured, we're looking at how that observation is being carried out altogether. So how is it actually being carried out? So we focus on structured. This is when you're going to be using things like behavioural categories. So if you think back to Mary Ainsworth, things like stranger anxiety or separation anxiety, and tallying every time you see one of these come up. Whereas unstructured, the researcher is just going to record all the behaviour. There's no system in place. The researcher will just write down everything that they say consistently. Now, with structured and unstructured, you might have your time sampling and event sampling as well. That may be something that you're sort of aware of. So time sampling where you tally behaviour happening within a time frame, events happening where you just sort of tally behaviour as and when it happens and within no time frame. Now, the reason why I mentioned about Mary Ainsworth's strange situation before is because it's something that everybody always struggles with in the exam when they sort of want to criticise the observation that was carried out. Because people struggle to decide, was it overt because the mothers knew what was going on? Or was it covert because the babies didn't? And it is always up for debate. I've just been chatting to one of my colleagues, Laura, about this now, in terms of what the actual correct answer is. And I think the answer will come in your justification. So if you want to criticize Mary Ainsworth's strange situation for being overt, because maybe the mothers knew what was going on and that might have led to demand characteristics in the way that she interacted with the baby, then you need to make sure you focus on the idea that it was the mum who essentially was aware. If you're going to go with covert and the fact that the baby didn't, and maybe you want to go with some ethical issues or the fact that it gives us more valid findings, then really focus on which participant you are looking at. As a teacher, I would be tempted to say it's an overt observation. The fact that the mums knew what was going on and they could have altered their behaviour, which then might have influenced the babies. But it is always up for debate. So just make sure your justification is correct if you're going to go with that one. Okay, so well done on that. That was beautiful. I'm going to pass you back over to Laura now for self-report techniques.
Excellent. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, so we're going to be looking at interviews and questionnaires next. So here you're going to have a minute, and I would like you to categorize the numbers on the right, 1 to 8, under either interview or questionnaire, okay, in terms of the technique, all right? So you can just get away with putting interview in the chat box and the numbers that you think correspond with it, and the same with questionnaire. Your time starts now. Okay, we've got some really good answers coming through. I'm just checking. 3, 5, 6, 7. Yes, so I think the first people to get those correct was Guest. I know you didn't quite get to finish your interview one off there, but I can see what you put below. And Rach, you got them all correct as well. So let's go through these. So for interview, we should have, of course, with an interview, because it's done face-to-face live with the researcher, the interviewee and the interviewer, you're available to ask questions if you're stuck or confused at any point. And also with an interview, because it's done live and face-to-face, you haven't just got the verbal descriptive answers. You've also got more information available, such as their body language, maybe their tone of their voice as well, for example. So you've got a lot more qualitative information to go by. However, you are open to more bias because of these things. And with an interview, it does require specialist training, whereas with a questionnaire, you don't need specialist training because obviously you can just hand a questionnaire out. So obviously that's going to be a lot quicker to collect, but also analyze. And there is anonymity here. So we could arguably say because it's anonymous more than an interview, potentially you're going to have less bias. And because of the kind of nature of a questionnaire, you can distribute it to a larger sample as well in comparison to an interview that might take, let's say, an hour per participant to sit down, ask the questions. With a questionnaire, you can kind of distribute that on a really large scale and get, a high quantity of responses back. So they're your main differences. Well done. I know a lot of others of you have got the correct answers there, but well done, Guest and Rach, for getting in there first with that one. We're going to play a game of true or false next. I think we've done this quite a few times. So again, just pop in the chat box whether you think it's true or false. So interviews can be conducted with a Likert scale. What are our thoughts there? Interviews can be conducted with a Likert scale. True or false? Yeah. So Rach, well done getting in there. False. Yeah, first. So yeah, the answer to this one is false. Where might we see a Likert scale in terms of a research method, guys? Where might that come up? Where might we see that instead? Not going to be an interview. Where else would it come? Where would it come up? Yeah, well done. So definitely questionnaires. We could expect to see it in a questionnaire. Definitely. Well done, Olamide. Let's have a look at the next question then. So interviews, especially structured, tend to produce quantitative data only. Okay. So Hannah's just asked what a Likert scale is. Really good question, and do ask questions if you're not sure. So Likert scale might be on a scale of 1 to 10. How much do you agree with the following statement? Where like 0 might be highly disagree, and 10 might be highly agree. So that would be an example of a Likert scale. Okay, so we've got mostly false. We've got a couple of trues in there though. Let's have a reveal of the answers. So remember, interviews, because they're done face to face and you're having almost like a conversation, this is qualitative data. It tends to produce, that's not to say it can't produce quantitative data. There could be some questions that are quantitative in nature, of course, but majority of an interview is qualitative in nature. What would be maybe a research method that would produce quantitative data, do we think? Where might we produce quantitative data? Yeah, Maisie Moo, yeah, you absolutely could do an interview where you ask a Likert scale of 1 to 7. You could do that. The point is you would then maybe go on to ask your participant to elaborate on that or justify it. And don't forget, we're talking about the majority of this research method of interviews is of a qualitative nature rather than quantitative. That's not to say there might be a question here and there that might be quantitative, but the majority of it is qualitative in nature. Yeah, really good. So closed questions on a questionnaire definitely is where we might see quantitative data come up. Yeah, excellent. Let's have a look at the next one then. So questionnaires tend to elicit more truthful answers due to the anonymity of them. True or false? Yeah, so just going back to that previous question, I thought it was true because the answers can be counted and categorized into quantitative data. I mean, okay, if we're going to do a content analysis on an interview script, yeah, then we're converting it to quantitative, but then that would be doing content analysis. Yes, there's a bit of a difference there, okay? Okay, so quite a lot of us are saying true here with this one. Yeah, so we've still got, yeah, Rach, you've actually raised quite a good point there. False, because potentially there might be some social desirability bias. Yeah, and I think, both with perhaps you could arguably say interviews and questionnaires, you could get that issue. I think the difference here is when we're comparing, if you like, and when we're looking at these two research methods, interviews and questionnaires, you're much more likely to get a truthful response with an interview because it's done face to face. With a questionnaire, because it is anonymous, unlike an interview, you're much more likely to get a more truthful answer. So again, it's just remembering that and that difference between those two research methods. So yeah, you've got a good point there, Rach, but still in comparison, it is going to be a little bit more truthful because of the anonymity of it, unlike an interview. Okay, the next one then. So we've got content analysis or thematic analysis would be most suited to interviews. So again, some of you, I've put this in here, some of you might not have covered content and thematic analysis yet. Some of you may have. So let's see. And if you haven't, that's absolutely fine. And we can briefly explain what these are. So yeah, a few of us are saying true here. Any others want to give this a go, a shot? True or false? Yeah, I'm going to outline these really briefly because these are research methods. They're more kind of second year research methods, methods of investigation. But it does need a bit more of a thorough kind of explanation in terms of these two because they are quite detailed. They're quite complex research methods. So yeah, a lot of you are correct. Those of you that have answered this one, it is true. Let me just explain very briefly what this is. So content analysis is where we are analyzing, if you like, qualitative data. So let's take, for example, an interview script. We've recorded the interview, we've then written it all out, and then we're going to conduct content analysis on it. What we do is we familiarize ourselves with the script, if you like, the interview that we've recorded. And we have preset determined categories. So let's say our interview is on, I don't know, let's say our interview is on hobbies, let's say something like that. And some of our categories are, let's say, video games, might be sports, might be gym, might be socializing, for example. So we'd have these categories already set. What we'd then do is we'd read the interview scripts and we'd basically tally every single time one of those categories occurs in the script. So we'd basically be converting, if you like to keep it simple, we'd be converting qualitative data into quantitative data. Yeah, well done, Rach, for outlining that as well. So that's kind of a brief overview of content analysis. Now, the difference between that and thematic is a lot longer as a process, one. Two, we do not have predetermined categories. They emerge, and that's a real big difference and one that we need to remember here between these two. Content analysis, we have preset categories. Thematic, they emerge. How do they emerge, you might think? Well, they emerge as we get more familiar with the data. So again, we'd still have an interview script, let's say. We've still got qualitative data. We're analysing that. We familiarise ourselves with the interview script. And then we see, okay, there are familiar themes coming up in this script. So then they emerge. Yeah, so we use those as categories, if you like. Now, one of the other big differences between content and thematic analysis is content analysis, don't forget, we're converting qualitative to quantitative. Okay, with thematic, we are keeping it qualitative. We are not converting it down to numbers, to quantitative. So you might think, well, how are we analysing it then? Well, we're analysing it under these categories, if you like, and we're almost giving a summary underneath each category. Okay, so we're still reducing the amount of information, but we're almost like giving a summary of it in terms of these categories. Okay, so that's how those two types of analysis differ. Again, we can deep dive both of these a bit later on when we go into a bit more detail on year 2 research methods, but hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour for now. Okay, so we're going to do another true or false question next. So well done those of you that got this correct for true, well done. So our next question is an example of an open question would be, how did you feel after your treatment? Is this true or false? So an open question. So again, when we think about question types, yeah, a lot of you are saying true. Can anybody change that question for me and put it into a closed question? Can anybody change that and put it into a closed question for me? So at the moment, we've got an open question. How did you feel after your treatment? Can anybody change that? Change it to a closed question. What do we think? And again, that could definitely be an exam question. You might be asked to kind of formulate a closed question with regards to a particular scenario or STEM they give you. Yeah, good. So we got the idea here. So we've got on a scale of 1 to 10, how did you feel? And you're just giving a numerical kind of closed, if you like, scale, a number. Did you feel good or bad after your treatment? You might want to say yes or no after that. Yeah, we've got a lot of ratings. Did you feel tired after your treatment? Again, we might want to just give that closed response there of like, you know, a yes or no option as a closed question. But you get the idea. And remember, with open question, you're kind of teasing out the participant to give more than a word. You're asking them to elaborate. How did you feel after your treatment? Of course, they could say good, but it's highly unlikely they just say good. They'd probably go on to explain how they felt in a bit more detail. Okay, with a closed question. Okay, we're really giving them a closed response option. So it might be yes or no. It might be like a scale, for example, with just a figure. So yeah, well done for recognizing that. All right, I'm going to pass you over to Melissa now for the last part of the session today, where you're going to look at correlations.
Okay, so we're going to have a go at a 10-second countdown now. If you've done these revision blasts before, you'll probably be familiar with this activity. So you're going to see a question on the screen in front of you, and you have 10 seconds to pop an answer in the chat. So this one is asking you to estimate the correlation coefficient.
Liftoff will start in T-minus 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition.
Okay, some really good answers coming in the chat. We've got -1, -1, 0.8, strong negative. We've got quite a lot of people saying -0.8. Let's have a little look at what the answer would be for this one. Good, excellent. I'm really impressed with how many people actually went for -0.8. Now, if you're not familiar or confident with your correlation coefficients, it's a number, and I'm not going to tell you too much because it's going to come up in a later activity, but it's a number which sort of represents how strong the correlation is and what direction the correlation goes in. So what you should be doing with this one, you should be looking at the correlation, and the first thing you should be thinking is that it looks like a negative correlation, and that's going to give you the minus sign at the front of your number. Now, quite a few people said -1. If it was -1, that would mean that it's a perfect negative correlation, and you would expect that line to be ruler straight. All of those points would be in a straight line, but they're slightly off. So it tells us that it's not perfect, but it's really strong. Now, the reason why it says -0.8 roughly, if you get asked this sort of question in the exam, sometimes it can be a multiple choice, and the answer should be quite obvious. It'll be the one that stands out. But if not, they will be quite lenient with you. They will give you a few numbers sort of either side. So you don't need to be dead on. It's sort of more of an estimate. That's why that's the command word for the question. Perfect. Okay, let's have a little look at the next one. So 10 seconds again to estimate the correlation coefficients of this one. This is an interesting
Liftoff will start in T-10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition.
Okay, let's have a little look at the answers. There's loads of good answers coming in for this one. Let's see. Some new names joining us as well for this one, which is good. So what is our answer here? Good, excellent. If you went with 0, you would be completely correct. What does 0 represent as a correlation coefficient? What is that telling us about this correlation? What does it suggest? You've got a correlation coefficient which is 0. What is it suggested about that correlation? Good, excellent. Well done, you three. Very fast coming in there. No correlation. These points are like a scatter graph, we call it in class. They're not really telling us anything at all. The two covariables, they're not associated. Okay, let's go with the next one. Okay, what have we got here now? So look for the direction and then tell me how strong you think it is.
Liftoff will start in T-10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition.
Okay, this one is probably the most interesting one. It's given us the most varied answers. We've got quite a few people saying 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. Let's have a little look at what we've gone for here. Yeah, we've gone a little bit stronger with this correlation because you can see straight away when you look at the image that there is a positive correlation forming. The points by no means are in a complete straight line, so we wouldn't be saying it's a perfect or not even really a strong positive correlation. But it's definitely more of a correlation, I would say, than a 0.2, 0.3. If it was a 0.2 or 0.3, I think those points would be much more spread out. But those who may be gone for a 0.4 or 0.5, you're more along the right lines. Just a reminder, again, in the exam, if they ask you to estimate, it is only an estimate. So if you didn't have exactly 0.6, then you'd be fine as long as you would need to, I'd say, a sort of a point either side. Another thing to make a point of, you don't really need to have the plus sign in front because you know the number is over 0, then it's a plus anyway. So a lot of people I can see are just going straight for the 0.6. It's always good maybe to indicate to the examiner that you know it's a plus, it's a positive direction, but it's definitely not needed. Okay, let's have a little move on then. So this is going to be one of our last activities for the evening. So well done if you've stayed this far with us. It shows that you are really focused and already thinking about your exams, which is perfect. We're going to see some text now about correlations, and there are 5 mistakes in this text.
Oh, I think Mel's just gone out there, so I'm just going to take over for a minute. So there are 5 mistakes in the text that's going to follow, and your job is to spot them all and correct them. So it's all right identifying them, but we really like to know what the corrections should be. Okay, so I won't read this out. I'll let you guys read this in your own time. But 5 mistakes in this text. So let's see if we can spot them first. If you can spot them and correct them at the same time, even better. So I'll give you a clue. The first one is in that first sentence. So can anybody spot the mistake that's in that first sentence to start with? Yeah, excellent guess. Well done. 2 sets, not 3. Well done. Yep, so we've also got, scattergram, not histogram. Well done. Excellent. Really good. What else have we got? Yep, so I think we've got those first 2. So the first 2 is obviously it should be 2 sets of numbers are related, and we should have scattergraph there as opposed to histogram. Can anybody spot the next one? So we've got here, yep, so well done. So the coefficient should be between 1 and -1, not 1 and 10. So that's the next mistake. So can we spot the last 2? Well done. You've done really well so far, guys, with these ones. This is quite a hard one. So read it very carefully, that last bit of the paragraph. Yep, so -1 and 1. Well done, those of you that have recognised that. It's quite wordy, the last bit, so you've got to be careful. Yeah, so I think I understand what you guys are saying. I think you've identified that. So it says here, coefficients with a minus in front of them highlight a negative correlation, which means that as one set of numbers, it says is decreasing, but it should be increasing. So well done. I think some of you have recognised that. There's one more mistake now, just the last one, which is a bit more towards the end of that paragraph. Has anyone spotted it? It's right in that last bit. Quite tough on the last one, but I'm sure someone's going to get it. So it's from, I'll give you a clue, it's starting from, Julia, you've hit it on the nail. Excellent, well done. So we've got, instead of opposite, it should be same. So let's reveal our answers here in the corrections. So we've got our incorrections here. These are all the ones that you've identified, so well done. And our corrections are on the next slide. This is how it should actually read, okay? So again, we've replaced them. Okay, so 3 with 2, histogram, scattergraph, 10 with -1, decreasing with increasing, opposite and the same. Okay, so excellent, guys. That was a really good research methods this evening, and thank you so much for partaking. It really, hopefully, we hope it's helping you and aiding you in your kind of revision journey here for your A-level in psychology. It's just a reminder I want to say, normally, obviously, we do every week for our revision blast, but we do have a 2-week gap coming up. And the reason for that is the team are going to be busy presenting our Strong Foundations event face-to-face. So if you still haven't booked onto that and you're thinking about it, please do. Hopefully Laura can maybe put a link into the chat box for you guys to have a look at that if you haven't already. Plenty of students come by themselves. Some come as centres, as colleges, as classrooms, as classes and teachers come, but you can absolutely book on as an individual and come to these events. Okay, so we've got Strong Foundations, okay, and we've got them in an array of subjects, not just psychology, but yeah, do come to the psychology one and you'll see some of the team. You'll definitely see Melissa. Are you doing some of the Strong Foundations? Yep, so you see Melissa, yeah. I'm definitely doing some. And some of the other psychology team that hopefully you'll recognise. Okay, so
Lily's just asking where they are, Laura. That they're everywhere, aren't they? They've got so many in different cities. I'm in Birmingham and London. Where about are you, Laura?
I only do the London ones. So yeah, there's
London.
about 3 or 4, I think, 3 maybe in London, and they're all at View Cinemas. So what we usually do is each subject takes a View Cinema screen, and usually they're fully booked, so they're pretty busy. So do book on if you're thinking about coming. And it's a whole day affair. So you get a booklet, they're like a physical booklet to fill in. It's an interactive session. You get a whole multitude of online resources as well as part of booking your ticket, and obviously you get to meet the team and ask us questions if you want as well, because it is for you. It's revision purposes for you. So you see there, Laura's just put the locations of where they are. So we've got Manchester, Birmingham, Gateshead, and London. So hopefully they are all within reach distance for you guys in terms of train journey or whatever it might be. Okay, but yeah, the link has been put in the chat box. So have a click on that. All the details and the locations are on there, as well as how to book tickets as well. Okay, so hopefully we'll see you at one of those events, but otherwise we'll see you in a couple of weeks, where we're going to pick up and we're going to be doing on the 3rd of December. So we're going back to Tuesday, same time, 6 o'clock. We're going to be doing data skills in psychology. And then we've only got one more on the 10th of December before the new year, which is our memory, the tricky bits. Okay, so stay tuned for those, guys. Have a good next 2 weeks. Hopefully see you at the Strong Foundations events, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks if not. Take care.
Bye.